Hey guys, welcome to AWS Black Box Methodology. This is probably one of my favorite parts of the course, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be one of your favorite parts also. But before getting started, let's recap a little bit. So to get to this point, we have talked about how AWS organization works, how they are structured, what are AWS principles, user roles, groups, and how you can give them permissions via AIAM, via AIAM Identity Center. Then we have navigate through a very big section about how different more than 20 AWS services work. And we have learned how each of these services work, but also how we can enumerate them and how can we abuse them to escalate privilege inside the AWS account, to pivot inside the AWS account to other users, to other roles, or even how to exfiltrate credentials for third-party platforms. So we have learned a lot through this course, and all this learning is what is allowing us to reach this point, this AWS Black Box methodology. We couldn't be doing a Black Box, we couldn't be doing a Red Team without understanding how a lot of the main AWS services that are going to be used work, because you wouldn't know how to attack an AWS account. Of course, we have also talked about some white box methodology, how to use automated tools that of course are going to be very noisy, but that will allow us from a white box perspective to find very fast different misconfiguration, different vulnerabilities in AWS environments. So let's get started with this lesson, which I'm pretty sure that you are going to enjoy. At least I hope you will enjoy it as much as I will do creating these videos. So let's start talking about this cyber kill chain. If you're a pen tester, I'm pretty sure you are already familiar with this type of circle where a professional is going to be showing the different steps to be performing, in this case, a red team assessment, a black box assessment. And these are the steps that I like. Other people might add other steps, might remove some of these steps. These are the ones that I like. So first of all, let's start defining what is a black box assessment or a red team. In this case, a black box assessment or a red team is this assessment that where you need to compromise a company, but you don't have much information about the company. You only know the company that you need to compromise. And actually, this is very important because you don't want to end up messing around with the assets of a different company, which is, of course, outside of the scope. So the first step that we are going to be doing is going to be the enumeration or discovery. You can call it whatever you prefer. So the goal of this phase is to find as much information as possible about the company that we are attacking. In a regular routine, we are talking about email addresses because maybe later you want to do a phishing, LinkedIn profile, so we know more information about the company, about the people working there, about the organization. Of course, you want to find also domains, subdomain, web pages, so later we can search vulnerabilities, IP addresses that belongs to the company, so we can also search for vulnerabilities. And in this case that we are talking about AWS, we are interested in finding as much information as possible about the company. This means that we are interested in knowing the name of the IAM Identity Center. If they have one, it's probably related to the name of the company. We also want to search for the AWS accounts IDs. These are the 12-digit number that identifies the account. We definitely want to search for that because then we can try to perform some entry point attacks, such as enumeration of role names, of usernames. All information that we are interested in is leaks. We are interested in leaks, passwords, credentials that has been leaked in some compromised databases, but also Git leaks. So if the company has any public repositories, we are talking about GitHub, about GitLab, Bitbucket, any repository, source code repository, we should be looking for Git leaks because there we could find all this information. We could find AWS IDs, we could find application IDs related to Cognito, we could find name of buckets, we can find a lot of information related to AWS, and we could even be finding AWS credentials. This is unfortunately more common than you will be expecting. So this will be the first phase, and we already know everything we can about the company, just searching on open source repositories, open source web pages, and probably the most you're going to be spending a lot of time here because you don't want to miss anything, and there is a lot of pages that will bring you a lot of information related to companies. Then the next step we want to follow is the exploitation. So now we should have found some way to compromise the company, and we are talking about some potential web vulnerabilities, some credentials that has been leaked, some Git leaks that give us some kind of access, some enumeration of the AWS accounts, and some entry points that are working. Remember that if you go to Cloud HackTricks to the AWS section, you have a section just about entry points you could be searching for in order to trying to find a step into the AWS account. Or if not, you might be just sending some kind of phishing links to the people working in the company, potentially asking them for the credentials to access an AWS account, for example. So this is the second step. This is the exploitation, and in this, if we are talking about AWS, we should be having by now some kind of access to the AWS account. This is going to be potentially a low-level access, maybe just a developer access, where he can modify some stuff, read some stuff, but we are definitely not yet administrators inside the AWS account. And there's where we start doing the internal enumeration. The internal enumeration is going to be just checking for other roles names, other usernames, permissions, which AWS service are in use, and what we can access with our current credentials. And this is very important because by default, you are not able to check permissions. You are not able to check what you can do. So we will be speaking about different ways to find out what you can do that are going to be more or less stealth. So this will be the internal enumeration, and after this, we should be able to know, well, at least what can we do and how the environment, the AWS account looks like. And at least know if we are in production, if we are in pre-production, if everything is in the same account. We should be knowing by this point some information about the AWS account we just compromised. And then we start doing some post-exploitation, persistence, and privilege escalation. Post-exploitation attacks, we have been covering this topic in all the services we have spoken during this course. So depending on the services that are being used in the AWS account, we should be doing one thing or the others. For example, if we compromise a developer account that has write access over some buckets containing JavaScript code that is loaded by some web page, we might be modifying this to do some account takeovers. Talking about persistence, if we have access to some lambdas, we might be compromising them to add in some persistence, or adding some lambda layers or some lambda function that will grant us some persistence. And in the topic of privilege escalation, this will greatly depend on the permissions that we are having and the services that are working. So, well, depending on what we have found, we can just go to Cloud HackTricks, check the potential privilege escalation vectors of those services and apply them. After we escalate privilege, we need to exploit that vulnerability we just found, and then we will restart with the circle. So imagine that we managed to compromise other credentials. These credentials might be having more permissions or different permissions than the one we had with the initial compromise. We should start running again the internal enumeration and start the silicon again. We need to start again with the internal enumeration because remember that different credentials in an AWS account are going to be having potentially different permissions. This means that maybe these new credentials have access to new services you didn't know that they were in use with the first credentials. So AWS is not like Active Directory, where when you get some credentials of a user, you're going to be able to completely enumerate the Active Directory. In AWS, every time you get new credentials, you might be finding new stuff, and you might be finding new ways to exploit it, to escalate privilege, or to persist. So every time you pivot to a different account, or to a different role, or to a different whatever, you need to restart the internal enumeration. At some point in this wheel, either we compromise completely the organization, either we achieve our goal, or either we are completely stopped and we cannot continue moving forward. We are going to pass to the step of profit. And this profit in our red team usually is just to show the client, hey, look, I just compromised as we talk about the complete AWS account. So we are inside and we can do this and this stuff, and we stole all the sensitive information from an well, not that ethical hacker, he could be doing some kind of ransomware or stealing data or mining bitcoins or any other cryptocurrency. Well, we will talking about some common vectors that we have seen in the wild used as profit when an AWS account is compromised. Of course, I don't recommend and I don't support doing this kind of stuff, but it's recommended to know about it because as cybersecurity professionals, at some point you might be involved in some case of this where you need to help the company find out what has happened and what the attacker did. So we need to know about potential profit vectors that attackers might be using in the wild. So during this video, what we are going to be seeing is all these different steps with some example of how to perform the step. So I have accessed GitHub and I'm using this GitHub feature of searching using regular expressions in order to find identity pool IDs of Cognito applications. These identity pool IDs is very common to find them exposed. Actually, in some cases you will need to expose them so the application will work because the client will need it. But actually this is just the information that we will be needing to start requesting for credentials related to these Cognito applications. So as you can see here, it's kind of easy to find this information in GitHub leaks. Actually, I just put this regular expression, and actually I'm just looking for the region US East 1, so we could even improve this regular expression to find any other region offered by Cognito in AWS, and we can see that we have almost 6,000 matches of our records. Of course, not all of them are going to be valid identity pool IDs, and actually a lot of them are not going to be providing us with relevant credentials, but this is a way where we could be finding a way inside company's AWS account, just looking for an identity pool ID and then asking for credentials. And this is the way that we are going to be compromising our fictitious AWS account. So we have already discovered an identity pool ID of the company we are attacking using GitHub leaks, or at least we are supposing so. And imagine that the identity pool ID we just discovered is this one just right here. We are going to start getting credentials from Cognito, and authenticated credentials, to see if we can do anything interesting from those credentials. Actually, the first thing we are going to be checking if, hey, are there configured and authenticated credentials or not, because obviously having this ID doesn't assure us that we are going to be getting credentials. So first of all, we are going to be getting an ID inside this identity pool ID, and then we are going to be using the ID we just got to request some unauthenticated credentials. You have more information about this in Cloud HackTricks in the Cognito section, of course, but also in the lesson about Cognito. So let me write this properly. Okay, and here we have just discovered that, hey, we have unauthenticated credentials to Cognito, so let's start using those. So let me configure them directly inside the credentials file. So let's create a new profile. We are going to be calling this maybe Cognito. We have our access key, our secret key, and the session token. Cool. Okay, let's save this. We call our profile Cognito, and then we continue checking that this is working. So let's call AWS STLs get caller identity. That's profile. So this is kind of who am I inside AWS. We indicate the profile name. And here we can see that we are Cognito unauth access unauth role. Okay, so yeah, the role is indicating us in the name of the role that we are Cognito unauthenticated. The first thing is going to be trying is to enumerate IAM privilege using the IAM service, but we don't have access. Then it's going to be checking if we have simulate permissions. We don't have simulate permissions, and now it is asking us if we want to continue with brute forcing. I know this is a weird check. We are already executing something called brute force AWS permissions, but I don't want people to be running things they don't really want to be running. So I will just leave the default as no. And if you really want to run the brute force, you just send a yes, and it will start running. At this point, it's just getting all the service name with all the permissions, and now it's starting enumerating permissions. In this case, the role we just compromised have actually in the EC2 service, the scribe does wildcard permission, which means that we are going to be having all the described permissions over EC2. I just give it this permission in order to show you how it will look like when you start finding these kind of permissions. So the way to compromise a complete organization once you have compromised the root account with high-level privilege is impersonating roles inside the children accounts. This is because when you create a new account inside your organization, it is going to be generating this role that by default is called organization account access role inside every children account. And this role is going to be trusting the organization root account, and is going to be having administrator access inside the children account. We saw this at the beginning of this course, and actually you can find more information if you don't remember about it in Cloud HackTricks. And finally, let's talk about profit. Profit is the part of the assessment where you show all the things that you managed to do and all the information, all the stuff that you could have done as an attacker. So if we are doing a red team, we probably will show the client that, hey, we got access to all this information, to all these assets, to all these services, and we compromised all of these, and you will send a report explaining in detail how you did it. But I'll actually take a look to what cyber criminals are doing for profit when they compromise an AWS account. Potentially the most common one, at least in the past, has been crypto mining. Like if you compromise access to EC2 instances, you just can start mining Bitcoin or whatever other cryptocurrency you want to mine, and making some profit from this access. Also, you could jump in everything and asking for a ransomware to not disclose all the sensitive information that you found in the AWS account. You could kill everything, you could remove everything and cause a kind of DOS. If the client is using infrastructure as a service, this shouldn't be much of a pain, but of course it's a way, I guess, to abuse these high privilege actions. Actually, I don't see why a red team or a cyber criminal will be doing this, but I guess this is an option to cause a DOS. And also, if you remember about KMS, we already talked about abusing KMS keys to create ransomwares in AWS.